Hey everybody, this is Dr. Maples. Today we're going to continue our series on publishing undergraduate research by talking about writing a discussion section. Discussion sections are important. They're that final piece that ties together your entire paper and explains why your results are important. Thing is, we don't really teach students how to write discussion sections until they get into graduate school. But don't worry, Dr. Maples has your back today. I've got a 4-step process for writing a surefire discussion section that's going to wow your professor and also help you get your research published. We got a lot to do today, so let's get started. Discussion sections are easily one of the most important parts of your paper, but it's also one of the most difficult parts. A discussion section is really that closing bow that you're putting on your paper that explains why your results matter, how your results would be experienced by people in our society, and even what you might want to do after this. A discussion section is you getting to the end of your paper and having a moment to reflect not only on what you've learned, but what we can teach others and where future researchers might want to go. Thing is, discussion sections are not something that we generally teach undergraduate students how to do. This is something that most often pops up in grad school, and that makes it really hard for you to be able to publish your undergraduate research. So what we need to do today is establish a 4-part process I call ARThR that's all about teaching undergraduate students how to write a discussion section that is meaningful and also help you publish your results. Now, while teaching you about ARThR, I'm going to use an example hypothesis throughout this video. That hypothesis is this: counties with higher levels of college graduates are going to have lower levels of poverty rates. This is a relationship that we have found across the United States, and it is a true hypothesis. We do know that this one is a fact. What we're going to do is use this example as we move through our 4 steps of ARThR. Now, our first step with ARThR is application. And this is where we're going to take the results from our analysis section and simply apply them to a real-world example. And really what this does is it helps the reader and us think about how our findings would be experienced in our society. And this helps us think about why those results are important. Now, our example here was college degrees and poverty rates. And so we could explore in our first section here of application how exactly this would be experienced by people living in our society. So if we live in a county that has more college degrees, how would that influence poverty? Well, an obvious example would be that having more college degrees means that we have more job opportunities. If you have a college degree, you can find jobs that pay better, have better insurance, have better health care, and more. On top of that, too, having all of these things influences the next generation. If you have great opportunities, you can pass those over to your children, and they can experience those. So now there's a long-term impact from having more college degrees. One could argue, too, if we have more college degrees in an area, this also could be a sign that our economy is very diverse and has lots of opportunities available. So these are all examples of now how we can apply this result of having more college degrees and how these things could influence poverty rates. So our second step is resolution. We've got this cool finding. We've explained how it functions in our society. How might we manipulate this relationship to the betterment of people in our society? Now, when you're studying social problems, things like poverty, what we really want to do is find solutions. We have found a statistical relationship in our pretend example of having more college degrees and having lower poverty rates. So what might we do to improve this particular situation? Well, a couple of things. First off, let's look at areas that have high poverty rates, and let's find ways to remove barriers to access to college. Maybe we find that there's not a community college there that's helping people get into the system. Maybe we need more access to labor market style jobs at a community college. Maybe we need to have a college campus that's simply near there. Or maybe we need to go even earlier than that. Maybe we need to find ways to influence high schools so that they're sending more people to college or preparing them better for college. Maybe even we simply need to add libraries in this area. Or, hey, hear me out, how about free college tuition? Because I support that. This is a great example, nonetheless, of how we could resolve this issue, this social problem in our society, and we can now make things better for everyone. Oh, do you see how this discussion section is starting to build on this and really explore why your results matter? See, you didn't even know your paper was important. How cool is that? Now, our next section is theory. And with our theory section, we're going to double down on this idea that our results are important, but also explore what big ideas have to tell us about these ideas, and maybe reinforce why our resolution was a good idea. Now, with theory, we already talked about this in our lit review section. And there, we pointed out theories that were relevant to our hypotheses and questions so that we could understand how others were thinking about these ideas. Well, now we can bring them home to roost and really explore how theory explains what we found, explains why our resolution is a good idea, and also even maybe gives us some things that we want to think about in the future. Now, when we're looking at our education example, we have a couple of different theories that we can run with. An easy one would be the dual labor market theory, which argues that there are primary and secondary jobs. Primary jobs are things that require more college education and more degrees, but they pay better, they have more options, and on top of that too, they're just better for you and your household. They create higher wages, higher health benefits, and more. Secondary jobs are things that don't require a lot of education, and they tend to be unskilled, but also lower paid jobs. We could think about how this labor market is very relevant to what we have found. If you have these primary jobs and you have access to them, it's good for the economy, but it's also good for your household. Meanwhile, if you don't have access to those kinds of jobs, you're very limited in your opportunities. You have low wage retail positions, food service positions, and more, and these aren't super desirable jobs. So we can see right away some cool benefits between having a college degree and reducing poverty simply because it creates a different kind of job. We could also talk about the idea of social capital in relation to education. Social capital is the idea that we have these networks that give us information about things like job opportunities and new things that might be beneficial to us. By going to college, you expand your social capital networks. This means you have more opportunities available to you and to your household. So here again, we have a second example of where theory could explain why there's this interesting correlation between higher college degrees and lower poverty rates. Throughout, what we're going to do is make sure that we talk about our theorists, we're going to cite them, we're going to mention them by name, we're going to define any terms that we have to so we're clear as crystal about exactly what we're talking about. But now our discussion section also has some theoretical foundations to explain why we found what we found and also why we think we have a reasonable solution to that social problem in our society. We're almost done. We've got one step left. So the final step in our paper, yay, is reflection. And this is a moment for you to look back and think about the questions that you still have about your topic, maybe some questions that you might want to look at in the future, as well as things that you might have done differently if you were to redo this study. This is really engaging the sociological paradox, which is the idea that by answering a sociological question, we raise more sociological questions, and that likely happened as a result of your study. Thinking back about the question that you asked, what are the new questions that you have? What are the things that you would like to explore in future papers? Well, here's a great chance for you to note that for yourself, as well as other researchers that might want to pick up this line of study. This is also a great chance for you to look back and say, there's some variables that I also should have included. Maybe if I were to redo this study, I might have done my survey this way. I might have rephrased this question this way. Or maybe if I had this piece of data, we would have had different findings. Well, this is a great chance for you to note that as well. Between these two things, you're building on the future of sociology. You're taking a moment to look backwards to now support future researchers just like you. So that's it, folks. We've learned ARThR, application, resolution, theory, and now reflection. You have a discussion section that is worthy of a journal. In our next video, we're going to talk about writing an intro to this paper, writing an abstract, and then our last video will be talking about how we're going to get this thing sent over to a journal. We're nearly there, folks. If you got questions or ideas, leave your comments below. I'd love chatting with you. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.